All right, all, since it's 1:02, I want to make sure that we get started and allow plenty of time for great conversation. It's lovely to meet all of you or see some familiar faces again. I'm Chelsea Carver. I am the Chief Development Officer at Mile High United Way. I've been here for the last 15 years, and I have to tell you, I did not see 2020 coming. And as everybody in this room knows and saw, 2020 required, I vowed never to say the word pivot ever again, but it required some tremendous pivoting. And I think when we were thinking about what were topics that would be really useful to have out in the open, to have some really good conversation and dialogue about, corporate social responsibility was top of the list because, as we all know, when the pandemic started, when it reached sort of that March 13 date, CSR was one of the first places to get hit. Everybody looked to our corporations to say, what are you doing? How are you pitching in? But I also feel like CSR was one of the very first places to pivot and the very first places that thought outside of the box, that looked toward a future that was more forward thinking than I think we've all had to be, and probably a little bit at least. And so that conversation, what we did last year, where we're looking to go the coming year and how we make that sustainable, I think is such an important topic. So I'm really happy today to have some fabulous presenters with us. We have Andrea Miller, Kirk Monroe, Don Pepke, and they have just a wealth of information. So I have to apologize for one moment. I'm going to read their bios to you because I want to make sure I don't miss anything. But Andrea Miller is the Corporate Social Responsibility Manager for Delta Dental of Colorado, focused on community partnerships, board leadership, employee engagement, and sustainability. She holds a certificate of corporate social responsibility from CU and a certificate of sustainable capitalism and ESG from UC Berkeley Law Executive Education. That is a mouthful, Andrea. She is also an adjunct professor in the Pathway Nonprofit Management Certificate Program at Red Rocks Community College, and is incredibly civically engaged, serving as the chair of the 2021 Be Civic Summit, which I'll put a little plug in there. It's a fabulous place for this group if you're not already attending to get some additional information. She's the vice chair for the Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce and on the board of Metro Caring. She is a fabulous partner of ours, and we're grateful for her leadership in the community as well as within Mile High United Way. Our next presenter is Kirk Monroe. Kirk comes to us from Vectra Bank with over 28 years of banking experience in leading those high revenue units of corporate real estate, private banking, and treasury management. But apparently in his spare time, he is also leading the corporate social responsibility efforts. Kirk, I don't know when you sleep. He sits on the advisory board of Vectra Bank and a board member for Metro Denver Economic Development Corporation, and serves on several other boards, including the Urban Land Institute and the Other Side Academy. He is a graduate from Arizona State University and has a master's degree in international business from the American Graduate School of International Management. And he also has a leadership certificate from the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School of Business. And last, but certainly not least, is Don Pepke. She is a senior specialist in community health and engagement with Kaiser Permanente in Northern Colorado. She has over 20 years of experience working in leadership roles for nonprofits, in fundraising, marketing, sponsorships, grants, and management. She holds a bachelor's degree from Michigan State University and is working on a second bachelor's degree in sociology from Colorado State University. Please join me in welcoming these fabulous panelists. Each of these three partners, like I said, is absolutely pivotal, I think, in our community and what they're doing. But as partners of Mile High United Way, we are so grateful for their leadership day in and day out. So just as CSR had to pivot, our companies had to pivot how they were engaging their employees, how they were looking to invest in the community, how they were looking to uphold the goals of their organization. Mile High United Way was also not immune to all of that pivoting as well. So I thought that I would share just a few key things because I know many of you in the room were partners in this work. And so if nothing else, I want you to be really proud of what you helped us accomplish. I have been here, as I said, 15 years, and we have done some pretty amazing things over the last 15 years. And I was absolutely prepared for last year to be a disaster. I was prepared for us to have lower donations and people that just didn't have it in their budget or, in their brain to be able to make charitable gifts or to volunteer or to step forward. And yet at every turn, every time there was a need, this community stepped forward. And so from a United Way perspective, I think what we did was absolutely amazing. But from a Denver community, from a Colorado community, what we did was phenomenal. And I will tell you, I'm a part of a weekly group with other United Ways across the nation, and that was not necessarily the case. When the governor called us in March and asked us to help him with the Colorado COVID Relief Fund, there were so many partners that are on this call that were the first in the door as soon as we had that set up to help direct funds there, eventually raising more than $24 million. When we were watching our first responders not be able to get into work because their childcare centers were closed, I know we reached out to several of you looking for bleach, looking for all of the things that none of us could get, but daycare centers needed those to be able to take care of kids. And we were able to get an initial purchase of $200,000 worth of bleach and wipes and hand sanitizer, all of those things, so childcare centers could remain open for our first responders. But then we were also able to raise more than $1 million as the pandemic continued to help keep childcare centers open. Because if any of you have children on this call, you know that working with children at home is a terrible idea and not conducive to anything. So that was something that was just, I think, phenomenal. And then looking at some of those nonprofit organizations that are in the really niche areas of our community or in the services they provide, Mile High United Way is now happy to have provided more than $3 million in rapid response funding to organizations over the last 18 months. And what I think was really cool about that is looking at a landscape of the community, we were able to support a food pantry in Netherlands that is literally the only food pantry that serves an entire community. So being really targeted in that work, and none of the things on this slide, none of that happens without tremendous nonprofit partners, without tremendous corporate partners, without amazing individuals. And so as I hand it over to Andrea, because I think Delta Dental has done just some amazing things under her leadership over the last several years, especially looking at how they think more strategically and more intentionally and how they lead truly as a corporation in this space. I just wanted to start with a note of gratitude for Andrea, for Kirk, for Dawn. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for everything you did for us last year, everything you did for this community last year, and thank you for being the partners that you are. We are incredibly grateful to you now and always. And so with that, Andrea, I will hand the mic over to you.
Thanks, Chelsea. And we're absolutely so grateful for Mile High United Way and all the services you provided. It was a joy and such a privilege to join in when we had to serve our communities in such a unique and different way. And it was an adjustment. And I will admit, thank you for the next slide. When we were talking about COVID and that March 13th date happened, I wasn't sure, just as a professional, what was going to happen with us, with corporate social responsibility, not in the sense of, are we still around, but I'm like, what do I do outside of serving frontline organizations? And I even thought to myself, maybe I should get a certificate in something else, like a leadership class. I don't know what I'm going to do, because we attend events and we come together as community and we meet and we talk, and that face-to-face, the relationships and the resources are so important. that it was a little confusing at first. So I felt a bit unsettled, as many of us did, as most of us did. But as we moved through the month of March and the month of April, it started to come together. And I show this slide not to rehash maybe some of our COVID response, but to use it as a starting point of how it changed our thinking from that moment on. As a nonprofit dental insurance company, we serve the community through our foundation, through our corporate social responsibility. We've done that for years through volunteering, through corporate giving, through our grant making. But it made us look at the different groups that we serve, and not just the community, our providers that had to shut their offices down because of the pandemic, and what happened to them financially or resource focused, to our customers that may have been affected by the pandemic, and as employee groups and employer groups, and what happened to their businesses as they had to shut things down if they were in the service field, and what that did for individuals that have our product as a nonprofit insurance company. And then we looked at our team members, our employees. We've always prided ourselves on being that nonprofit insurance company that brings joy, brings community, and ties our employees to the community through volunteering and giving. But we knew some of our employees were hurting and needing some support. So corporate social responsibility stepped in places that I did not expect. We love to work with our different departments, but this March, April, May timeframe, we worked with departments in ways that I never thought possible. We worked with HR really closely to create an employee assistance fund for COVID relief. We worked with our provider and sales and client services teams to talk about providers and our customers, those who hold our insurance product, and what we can do for them. And that collaborative effort has stayed with us, and it has elevated corporate social responsibility at Delta Dental in a way that I had never imagined. Being a strategic, forward-thinking organization, I thought we had it all in the bag, and then this comes about and pushes us even further and pushes us to be even better. So this is really our starting point of, like, when we say, what is the future of CSR after 2020? This graphic here describes exactly what pushed us into this next frame. So next slide. As I mentioned, we did team member volunteerism, sponsorships and grants, or leadership. We've always done all of those. If you've seen our Delta Dental toothbrushes with our tooth fairy on them, very classic corporate social responsibility. We were community engagement before we changed our name to corporate social responsibility to be a little more solidified into what the field looks like nowadays. As we talk through our strategy, we really thought we're all about mile high smile power. And corporate social responsibility encompasses much more than the volunteering and giving. So we had already been on that trajectory of shifting from doing a lot of galas to doing some, because we know they're critical to some nonprofits, and doing a lot of festivals to doing no festivals. Our volunteering needed to happen in the community with those organizations that needed some support with volunteer time, talent, and treasure. But then taking away the volunteering from festivals and the cause marketing allowed those volunteers to shift over into that in-person, in-community volunteering. Looks a little bit different during the pandemic, but what was there. The pieces we've been looking at this as we add our strategies: sustainability, I'll talk about that in a little bit, good governance, small business engagement, that ESG, where is our portfolio invested in as a nonprofit dental insurance company? Are we investing in our financial portfolio that has sugar or soft drinks, those kind of things? We need to divest from those. So we went even into the financial components of our corporate social responsibility. So we took this bigger picture view with our mile high smile power. Next slide. I just wanted to detail a little bit and say those look great. We have all these different headings, and you could say, well, what did you do in those areas? Sure, we can talk about what we did for volunteering. We did a couple of hours here and there. We actually went really deep in each of those categories. I could probably talk for an afternoon on how we went into each of those categories and did a big assessment. And we did surveying of our team members, our employees, our stakeholders, what is needed to make that corporate social responsibility the best we can for Delta Dental. One aspect that we enhanced quite a bit is our team member giving program. We encourage people to give. We've worked with Mile High United Way and a pledge campaign for years, and had our senior leadership be silly and fun and make those pledges for the year. We wanted to continue that, but also we knew we had team members that wanted to give in other places that would still have a big impact in the community. So creating a program that was all encompassing, whether it was their gift through Mile High United Way or Women United, or it was directly to Metro Caring or directly to DPS Foundation. We wanted to give those options. So we have volunteer time off as a component. We have 16 hours a year that team members can take as paid time off. The pandemic has curbed that a little bit. We haven't had a lot of utilization. This is a new program, so we're anxious to see how it goes. We match gifts of up to $1,000 a year. It can be $1,000 gift to one organization and you're done, or small $25 gifts to all the organizations that you love and care about. We added these other elements and they were new to me. Our Vice President of Corporate Social Responsibility had produced these programs at a previous corporation, and I think they're really cool. We've gotten a lot of traction. Dollars for doers. So for every 10 hours you log on the system automatically will provide a $100 donation to that organization, and team members have up to $500 per year. So they can do basically 50 hours. Money for movers. We have a lot of requests and we love health and wellness. That's what we're all about. That's the backbone of our organization. And I wish I could support all of the 5K walks, runs, stair climbs, cycling events. We would just have a blast all year long, but it's just not possible. And this is really team member focused. We had a lot of team members that had causes they cared about, that they would come to us and say, will you sponsor this? And we always, I would say always, on the whole way to say no, because we had those organizations that had their 5Ks that we've been doing for a long time. This is a way for them to engage with those organizations. So they participate, get some cool wellness points with our HR, wellness, vitality. Then they also get to log that and get a $100 donation for every walk that they do. It has really been a great move for us. And the last thing is we have all of our cool drives like we do for Bridging the Gap and the Thanksgiving basket. So for every dollar or in-kind gift, we'll match that dollar for dollar. So this has been a great thing during the pandemic for our team members to say, they've enhanced my benefits at Delta Dental of Colorado. They've enhanced the way I can interact with the community, even at home, even virtually. We've got a lot of good response from it. Next slide. And this will be my final slide, talking about the whole comprehensive plan. We have sustainability, and I will say, when I started at Delta Dental, or other people have asked me, you're an insurance company. What on earth can you recycle? Paper? Can you turn off the lights? Like, you're a company that processes claims for insurance. There are plenty of things we can do for sustainability. In addition to working through a pandemic, we moved offices. Our 25-year headquarters over at the top of the tech center, we moved from there into a new building over by Fielder's Green that is LEED Silver certified. And so we wanted to match some of those incentives in our building. Our 2 floors here in our suite are very, very green. We have compost and recycle, and we do TerraCycle for oral healthcare products. A lot of cool things that you would naturally think of. But we took it a step further and said, as we are looking outside, I can see my view here and see all of the smoke in the air. It's all of our responsibilities to care for the earth. So going green is good for business. And yes, we have a green logo. We're really proud of our green. So that works really well with the sustainability connection. So we looked at operations. So that's our building and how we're being efficient and good use of time. Materials management, saving not only the resources for the earth, but honestly saving money for our company. The education, how are we educating employees about what they're doing at home, in the community, and here at the office with all of our sustainability initiatives. And then with some community partnerships, we partnered, for example, with Doug for Denver Urban Gardens to help out our adopted school, Ellis Elementary, build an outdoor environmental classroom. That's not something people would think of when they think of dental insurance. So the pandemic has really, in essence, when you talk about the future of CSR after 2020, has pushed us to think broader, to think bigger, to kind of get out from that navel gazing and the volunteering and giving, and think about the holistic approach and all of our stakeholders that are involved. It's much more than the community for us. So I would say we have learned a lot of good lessons through the pandemic. continue to learn those and have, as Chelsea used that word that I'm the same. I thought I'd never say pivot again, but boy, we pivoted. Got a lot of learning and just internally, but did not get that certificate of leadership. That's for sure. Didn't have to sit around and wait for things to happen. So thanks, Chelsea.
Fabulous. Thank you, Andrea. And I loved thinking about it holistically. I think that's such an important thing, generally speaking, but even in the last 18 months, looking further out than beyond that initial stakeholder group to the community, to the nation, to this, to wherever that ends. I love that sentiment. Kirk is next. And what you all should know as Kirk begins is not only did they do such an amazing job at Vector Bank pulling up this beautiful CSR program, but they did it in the midst of a pandemic. So kudos on top of kudos to Kirk. And with that, Kirk, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Chelsea. And again, Andrea, congratulations on all that you've achieved at Delta Dental. It's neat to watch where you are with this whole process. And we'll talk about where we are as Vector Bank Colorado. And Chelsea, to your point, we as an organization started to focus on CSR in 2018. And I, along with others, were asked to lead the charge with our organization in September of 2019. And so we had started the process of, okay, what does this look like? We were unable to hire somebody specifically for CSR, but the organization knew that there was a handful of us that were very passionate about this and what it could do for our organization. So we're heading down this path. And yes, Chelsea, to your earlier point, we do have other responsibilities at our organization, but we're moving forward. And all of a sudden March hit. And that was oh my goodness, that was where did this come from? What's happening to us? And in the meantime, I'll never forget April 3rd of 2020, because that's when PPP started for us as a bank. And, we used the phrase that we were flying an airplane while we were building it at the same time, because nothing like this had ever existed, at least in my lifetime. And so for us to, and I won't use the word pivot, but for us to adapt and adjust to what we needed to do during that month of April, that's what we had to focus on. I mean, it was right in our face, many long days, long hours, focused on PPP. But in the back of our minds, we were saying to ourselves, you know what? We can't slow down with our CSR endeavors. This is something that we're committed to. This is something that we're going to go forward with. So let's get to a point where we're in a good place, end of May with the first round of PPP, and let's go back to what we're trying to do with CSR. What it was really interesting, again, with our effort, it was really from the ground up. We ended up with about 10 to 15 stakeholders that created what CSR was for Vector Bank. And you've got in front of you the 4 guiding principles that group created. And we started with, where do we start? And a lot of people came back and said, you know what, this needs to be intentional. It needs to be authentic. It needs to have purpose behind it. And that's where we came up with these 4 guiding principles. And we'll dive into these in the next couple of slides. But it was something that we could rally behind. As an organization, we knew that we were already giving back to the communities that we serve. We have several employees that are on nonprofit boards. We have several employees that donate and volunteer time to nonprofit organizations, but we needed to put a circle around it in some capacity and put an initiative and a real focus behind it. And this is what we came up with from a framework for our strategy. So when you ask, how did we pivot or how did we change in 2020? It was actually the perfect storm. I mean, we had an opportunity to create something from the ground up and then shift as needs, provided themselves. We formally launched our program in September of 2020. And we're able to do things like the essential givings, essential items for the United Way, where in the month of October of last year, several of our branches collected essential items that we were able to give to the United Way, and do that during the pandemic, do it outside, do it behind masks, and give back where we could. So if we go to the next slide, we kind of drill in a little bit deeper to some of our what does this really mean to us? And again, as Andrea suggested, there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of data, but these are just examples of what we were doing during last year under the 4 guiding principles that we had. If you go to the next slide, the area that I'd like to focus on under this ethical business is the Everyone Counts Council. This is something that was created a handful of years before we even started CSR. This was, again, from the ground up inside of our organization, realizing that our employees wanted to matter outside of just what we do in banking. So under the Everyone Counts Council, we have groups like Vectra Veterans, our Minorities Forum, which we started in 2020, Vectra Women, our LGBTQ plus group, and we have a Takes Care group that focuses on disabilities with either the employees or the employees' families. So we had started this early on, but then we thought to ourselves, with CSR, how do we put an umbrella over this? How do we capture everything together? Which goes back to the 4 guiding principles and the 4 areas that we focus on. If you go to the next slide, which is my last slide, we formed 2 different councils. We have an executive council. There's 6 of us that meet on a monthly basis. This advisory council, there's about 15 employees and business partners that meet on a quarterly basis to push this forward. You ask about sustainability. Sustainability always goes back to accountability in my perspective. And so it's incumbent upon myself and others to push this forward, to consistently meet and have these discussions. If we talk about environmental sustainability, we at Vectra have a large initiative with affordable housing and what we can do in that area. And so it's granting our employees to have a voice. And I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways that we've had over the last 12 to 16 months is that people have stepped forward and they've said, you know what, I want to engage. This is where I want to engage. This is what I can do. And we've allowed for that to happen. So pulling that back together and having the collaboration and the collective voice, I think is one of the greatest takeaways that we've had from our CSR initiative over the last 12 to 15 months. So that, Chelsea, I'll kick it back to you.
I love that. Thank you, Kirk. I love that collective vision. I think I'm starting to see a theme come out here. We've got that holistic, collective, that sort of thing. And also you went quickly, but 749 million in PPP. Good God.
It's something that I'm very, very proud of with our organization. And I know we did it a second round this year and earlier 2021. I really hope there's not a third round. I mean, we will step up. I mean, if there is another round, we will step up and step in like we've done in the past. It was just an incredible experience.
Fabulous. Well, thank you, Kirk. Deeply appreciate your insight. And last but not least, Dawn from Kaiser. We saved you for last, Dawn, because as Kaiser not only stepped forward in your community support, obviously Kaiser also had some tremendous frontline, first out the door people with the COVID-19 pandemic. So we'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Indeed, we were some of the first to pivot, to use your favorite word. Us and all of the healthcare organizations as well. So what's great about this is that you might have seen me making some notes. We're learning from each other, and I just love the collaborative effort. So thanks so much for the great ideas, Kirk and Andrea. Love it. So just this first slide is kind of an overview, a high-level view of, to Chelsea's point, of kind of what we did when the pandemic started. And just a little background: as a nonprofit healthcare system, corporate social responsibility work is really woven into everything that we do. It's part of our mission. And so Kaiser Permanente is the largest nonprofit healthcare system in Colorado. And we have over 550,000 members in Colorado. And throughout all 8 of our regions, we take care of over 12 million members throughout all 8 of those regions, with our mission of providing high quality, affordable healthcare services and improving the health of our members in the communities that we're in. So see, that's where the CSR part comes in. And so from a enterprise and regional perspective, Kaiser Permanente pivoted right away. I think we stood up our emergency operations center about 6 weeks before, maybe it was a month before March 13th. And I remember when that started and it was like, what is happening? What are we doing? What's going on? And it was just kind of all happening so fast that you just kind of had to do the next thing, right? And so that's what Kaiser did. And some of the first things that we did was set up outdoor testing sites in each of our service areas. And then we also had to close several of our medical offices to meet those COVID guidelines set forth by the CDC and the state. So that was challenging, you know, rearranging where everybody was working and how everybody was working. Of course, you know, working for the health plan and more of an admin role. We all worked from home immediately starting March 13th, and I've worked from home ever since. So, and it's actually permanent now, which is for our department, which is great. And, you know, one thing that we had to do is ramp up our telehealth services. And we at Kaiser Permanente had a really robust infrastructure in place already. But as you can see from the slide, you know, the number of video visits between 2019 and 2020, I don't even know what that percentage is, but it's, you know, off the charts. But we went from 916 video visits and trying to promote with our physicians to do more of that to almost 65,000 video visits. And today, still, even though we're, you know, the pandemic's not behind us, but we're, you know, slowly getting out of it. About half of our outpatient care visits are still conducted virtually. So I think once people did it and realized, you know, because they had to, they realized, well, this saves time and this is just, you know, just as great as, you know, being in the room and I don't have to travel anywhere. And so the video visits continue. So on the next slide, talk a little bit more about some of our investments that we did. You can go to the next slide. So we invested about $4.4 million in direct community support in response to the pandemic. And this included a lot of things. So I'm going to touch on several of them, but I am missing some things on this because we ramped up things we were already doing and added a lot of different things too. So one thing that we did was a public awareness campaign called Together We Thrive, which we're still promoting. And that, you know, that encouraged the mask wearing, the hand washing, and the social distancing that we're all really tired of hearing about, but it's still good practice, just saying. We offered COVID testing for essential frontline workers, and we continued our partnership. We already partnered with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, but we furthered that and leveraged that partnership to provide those vaccines and to provide testing for our frontline workers. And then when the vaccine did roll out, we worked with them on distribution plans as well. We donated more than $800,000 to that Colorado COVID Relief Fund that you mentioned, Chelsea. And 300,000 of that went directly to our safety net clinic partners, which helps provide care for uninsured or underinsured adults in our communities. Another thing that we did, we had our Find Your Words campaign that we launched, I want to say like 3 or 4 years ago, but we relaunched it. And what that is an online resource. It includes a tool for to screen for depression and also provide some mental health resources. And we added a couple of apps for our members for free. The Calm app, if you haven't tried that, I highly recommend it. And the My Strength app, which is more of a exercise and physical fitness, kind of keeping you accountable kind of thing. And to Andrea's point, we also set up several internal programs for our frontline staff, for our employees. We instituted a new time off protocol and some other things in direct response to the pandemic. And the next slide. So Kaiser Permanente, getting into a little bit of the weeds. So we have something that is completely unique to Kaiser Permanente that no other healthcare system really offers. And that is our Arts Integrated Resources team. And so these are facilitators and actors, and they provide free mental health programming for mainly middle and high school students, elementary school students as well. And as you know, probably in the before times, it was all in person. And they pivoted really quickly and brought a lot of those programs to virtual, brought them online. And some of those programs include Ghosted and another program, a companion program to Ghosted called Own It. And both of those programs help students with practical steps to help keep themselves and their friends safe around suicide ideation. And you know, they did that program over 50 times in 7 different school districts, all virtually. And so that's a huge impact, and that's really creating a resource for folks that you can't get anywhere else. Another program that we do is the Care Equity Project. And this is a program that helps providers and caregivers deliver empathetic quality care to everyone. The Rise Up program is resiliency in school environments, and that helps empower schools to create a safe and supportive learning environment for employees and the students. Our Thriving Schools program, we provided about $1.5 million in grants to implement that Rise program. Virtually, we had a playbook on like how to bring kids back into the classroom, or how to send them home again, or how to, you know, do school at home, that kind of thing. And we provided some funding for educators to help implement some of those playbook activations. And then we also provided about $300,000 in healthy meal and food distribution, because as you know, in the before times, a lot of kids, you know, received 1 or 2 meals sometimes at school. And if they weren't in school, they weren't getting those meals. So we helped provide some districts some money so they could redistribute those meals to kids. Volunteering is a huge deal at Kaiser Permanente. We allow 8 hours a month paid for our KPCO employees to volunteer in the community. And to Andrea's point earlier, we did not do that in 2020. We pretty much stopped everything. But one of the biggest times that we volunteer is on MLK Day. Typically, that's a day off. We call it a day on of service. And in the before times, we would send out 700 or 800 employees into the community to do a bunch of different projects with a lot of different nonprofit partners. This year looked very different, but we were able to do 4 virtual projects, and then we held 4 in-person blood drives and a virtual blood drive in partnership with BuyTalent. BuyTalent has been an amazing partner. It's not really volunteering, but it's been able to kind of fill that gap. It's a way for our employees to feel like they are giving back, and it is such a high need. Still a high need. If anybody's interested in donating, they still have a high need for blood products. And around MLK Day last year, we were able to get over 200 donations of blood. So it was very successful. And we continue to work with BuyTalent on holding regular blood drives in person and with their bloodmobile when it's available. We also have several business resource groups at Kaiser Permanente. All of that work was on hold as well. And right now we are revamping that program and getting folks more engaged in the community. So that's exciting. We also have a very long history of providing support for our nonprofit partners through sponsorships and donations and grants. March 13th, that pretty much came to a standstill, and about a month and a half later, when the dust settled, we realized that we were able to provide some of our nonprofit partners that usually had a gala or a luncheon or something that maybe we had historically supported in the past with a general operating donation instead of a sponsorship, to kind of bridge that gap for them. So that was great. And then we did an employee campaign in partnership with Mile High United Way, where we matched 100% of our employee donations to that Colorado COVID Relief Fund. An important program that we launched last year is called Unite Colorado. And what this is a closed loop referral system. It's designed, really the bottom line, it's to connect our members, but also the community to resources outside of our medical walls. And right now we have about 210 nonprofit partners that are affiliated with that and providing resource or referrals throughout the system. When you talk about city health and environmental stewardship, a big project that we work on, my wonderful colleague Lynette Namba leads this work around banning tobacco flavored products throughout the region. And so that will be coming to the Denver City Council, I believe, in October. So you might hear more about that. But earlier this month, we had a great win. The City Council of Edgewater voted unanimously to ban the sale of flavored tobacco products within the city. So pretty cool stuff there. And in September of last year, Kaiser Permanente, throughout our enterprise, became the first healthcare system to achieve carbon neutral status in the United States. So that's a pretty big win as well. Let's see. In the housing and homelessness space, we do a lot of work, but one of our main goals is to help strengthen our homeless systems of care. And so we work with a national nonprofit called Community Solutions and their Built for Zero program. I'm happy to talk about this in more detail with anybody that wants to ask about it later. But basically it's around achieving functional zero homelessness in your community. And in Northern Colorado, they will complete functional zero homelessness for their veteran population by the end of this year. So we're really proud to be a part of that work. We also started doing a lot of work around economic opportunity, and we partner with several nonprofit organizations around the country to improve financial security, increase income, build wealth, and reduce those economic inequities across our communities as it pertains to economic opportunities. So one really cool thing that we recently did, we announced this in June, was $1 million investment to help create the Kaiser Permanente Colorado Equity Scholarship Fund. And we're doing this in partnership with the community college system. And this is a fund that will provide financial assistance to students of color and other underrepresented groups for the advancement of their education in healthcare, in the healthcare industry. So super excited about that. Next slide, and which is my last slide. This is just kind of a mishmash of some of the things that we've been doing. And in addition to these, we take a very active role and have been taking a very active role in addressing vaccine equity. And as part of that work, we have provided over $2 million in COVID-19 equity focused philanthropy. So we provide, in addition to the funding, we provide technical assistance, partnership, and evaluation for our grantees around that work. And there was another pretty big gap in our older population. They had issues with getting to their vaccination appointment. And so we provided some financial support to 8 community-based organizations that provide transportation to help our older population get to their appointment. So sounds like a small thing, but just providing that opportunity for them to get their, removed a barrier. So whenever we can do that, that's what we're going to do. And at Kaiser, just to kind of round it out, we recognize that, where we live and how we live has a huge impact on our health and well-being, and our work continues. Over 75 years ago, it started this way, and it continues to be about prevention and health promotion. And our conviction is that good health is a fundamental right for everyone. So that's why we do what we do, and we couldn't do what we do without partners like Mile High United Way. So So thanks for letting us talk a little bit about our CSR work.
Thank you so much, Dawn. Good God, you guys have a lot happening. I don't know, all three of you, I don't know when you have time to sleep or breathe or do anything else. But I do love what I saw throughout all three of your presentations is this concept of both interconnectedness and also looking at employee engagement and community engagement. And I feel like in the past we were strong in one area, but maybe less strong in another. And what I'm seeing now is this beautiful rounding of everything and knowing that there is no spot where you can be less strong anymore. You have to invest in each of those places. So thank you so much. To everyone who has been holding questions, thank you, or who've sent me them directly. I'm gonna start by just throwing out some of these questions. Most of them are applicable to all three of you. So I might just call on one of you to start, and then if either of the other two of you want to add something, please do, or we can try and get through as many questions as possible. So the first question is from one of our partners who has not yet started a CSR program and is wondering, since all of these are much more built out, if you were going to start a CSR program, what is the one or maybe two things that you would say, definitely start here, don't do that, don't go forward until you've done this? So maybe Kirk, I might start with you since you guys just sort of did this work.
Happy to chime in with that question. It's a great question because it's what we had about 2 years ago. We knew there was a need, we knew there was a desire and a want inside of our organization for a CSR platform, but how do you start? Where do you go? Be Civic is a great organization that we're members of, that I knew Kirsten from a different past and reached out to them to get more engaged. And it's organizations like Be Civic that you can attend their summit, which I think is October 27th. I think we were going to give that a plug at some point, to start generating these ideas. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we were not in a position to hire somebody for a full-time role to lead the CSR initiative. However, I can guarantee you've got people inside of your organization that would love to be a part of this idea, this push, and find those people and again collectively make that commitment. We met probably weekly. The one thing that I didn't mention earlier about what happened, sort of the silver lining with the pandemic, was the use of Teams, Microsoft Teams, where you have a live document that you can go into and update and create different ideas and just start bouncing ideas off of each other. And so, if you're able to hire somebody, you can head down that path. Be Civic is a great place to start, or just do it internally and find your stakeholders and rally them around this idea.
Thank you. Absolutely. Andrea, if I'm not mistaken, you are the chair or one of the chairs of the summit this year, or is that last year?
I am, yes. Yeah, chair of the summit this year. It's Act to Accelerate. We chose that theme because, just as Kirk and Dawn mentioned, we did so much last year that we don't want to lose the momentum. So it's October 27th and it is all virtual. So definitely accessible. Thanks for the plug.
Love it. Andrea or Dawn, do either of you want to add to what Kirk has mentioned?
I will chime in that part of how we got to this level of corporate social responsibility is, again, using the resources of eCivic and the partners around you at different companies, but to take some time with your senior leadership or middle management and talk about what corporate social responsibility is to get that buy-in. We have a CSR committee and they've always been really active and engaged, but I don't think they would be able to do the cool things they do as a volunteer committee here on staff if we didn't have the buy-in from leadership.
Absolutely. Dawn, anything from you?
Yeah, that's a really great point. Because it's really woven into the fabric of our organization as a nonprofit healthcare organization. Sometimes it does get overlooked. And so getting that leadership support and buy-in to help tell the story of what our investments in the community do, I think is really important. But to start your own, CSR program, a new one, I think Kirk, his recommendations are spot on. And the only thing I would add is that, at an easy thing to start with, I think, is a volunteer program. You don't have to be fancy about it, but if you can get leadership buy-in to approve some paid time off, no matter what that looks like. Sometimes it's 2 hours a year, and that's a place to start, but that shows that they support that work. And there's always nonprofits that need volunteers, so it's and it's another way to get your colleagues and employees involved, because everybody has a favorite nonprofit that they want to do more with, and so if you ask them, hey, if we were to give you, some hours paid, where would you want to volunteer? And that's a good place to start,
Absolutely. I will do a little shameless plugging here too. Please remember that we have an amazing resource at United Way with our volunteer team and Volunteer United. We actually have some of our volunteer team members on the call today. So know that we are always happy to help you think through, plan, execute something like that, because I agree. I think that of anything that I've seen in the last probably 5 years, that's been one of the biggest shifts I've seen, is that employee engagement via volunteerism. And I think moving into the skilled-based volunteerism even more and more over the last couple of years. Okay, next question is really one for all three of you. The title of this session was how to make it sustainable, and all of you did a ton in 2020. So if you were to pick one of the things that you did that is the thing that you will sustain going forward, or was the most impactful thing, what was that for each of you? And Don, since you finished, maybe we go backwards in order, although you look like you're still thinking. Do you want to start?
Still thinking.
Okay.
This isn't a direct, I don't think this is a direct answer, sorry. But I think what 2020 gave us the opportunity was to really talk about what we do as an organization a little bit more through our partnerships and in partnership with our partners. So just, continuing to leverage our relationships and build our relationships, because it's all about collaboration. That's my answer. You can't really do anything alone. Like, you can't do this stuff in a silo. And that became very apparent, in 2020. And, that Unite Colorado program that I mentioned, that is, it kind of exemplifies that collaborative effort to really, create access for not only Kaiser members, but for our communities to get the care that they need. And so something that organically has happened through that program is that nonprofits that maybe never met before, or maybe they saw each other at an event or whatever, they are now working together to help create that access for their clients as well. And so yeah, collaboration, short answer.
I love it. Kirk or Andrea?
Ladies first.
I will say it came out of 2020. Boy, moving 200 people during a pandemic was difficult, but rather proud of moving to a new office that's very sustainable. And again, it's not normally what you think of for an insurance company, but that sustainability piece and learning so much about ESG and sustainability and how every single company impacts our environmental footprint in some way, form, or fashion. How do we help each other as companies understand that better? Because I feel like we as an organization are much more equipped to be the advocate for going green, working with our partners here, just even in this building, has been a game changer for us. But yeah, I would lean on collaboration too. I think CSR is now even more seen as a resource for all kinds of things. We affect the bottom line. I think CSR used to be a cost center, and now we're a revenue generator. And that has been a huge shift in 2020.
So I guess what I would add to that, and perfect segue into what we're seeing in the banking industry, where companies lead with that question, what is your CSR platform? It's not, I need X amount of money, or I need this over here. It's, what are you doing for the community? And so that pushes us forward. It keeps us going with the idea that we launched this during the pandemic. To your point, Andrea, earlier, we gave out 8 hours for every employee. Last year, we increased that to 16 hours this year. And so it's that consistency and the accountability of just pushing this idea forward. It's, the infamous saying where the train has left the building and it's not coming back. I mean, this is a part of our community and our society going forward. And it's up to people like us to continue to push this forward and make sure that this doesn't stop.
I love that. I love that. Okay, my clock is showing that we have about a minute left. So I will leave the floor open to the three of you if you have any final thoughts. If not, we can, I think Kenzie has one more slide for me, which I can happily wrap up. Last words from our presenters?
I think Kirk's final comment was fabulous and leads into your slide right here.
I love it. Thank you, Kirk, for that perfect segue. Do know there are so many amazing, when I started today talking about what an amazing community we're a part of, there are resources everywhere in this community. Be Civic is amazing. There are so many nonprofits that would welcome you with open arms. And obviously Mile High United Way is happy to help strengthen what you've built, to help build things for you when you don't have time, money, or people. But do know volunteerism, giving, thought leadership. I think we've seen some tremendous success getting some rising stars and young leaders onto our nonprofit boards, getting them out in the community. That's been amazing. And even training them, how do you interact as a board member, and making sure that your employees are seen as thought leaders for your company and in the community out in the universe. That's something that we've seen a lot of success with. And last but not least, we are privileged to run the 211 helpline here at Mile High United Way. So we get daily on the ground data from what's happening in our community. If it's ever of value to you, your leadership team, or your employees, know that we are always happy to do a little philanthropy, what's happening in the universe right this moment conversation with you. But with that, I will thank you for your time. It's 2 o'clock on the dot. We've loved having you. Thank you, Kirk, Don, and Andrea. You guys have been fabulous panelists, and I'm grateful to be by your side.